that maybe there'll be a process, maybe there'll be elections agreed, maybe there'll be a 2-year process, a 3-year process. The United States said no. Assad must go the first day of any agreement or we block it. And so Kofi Annan stepped down from his position after having negotiated a peace arrangement. And we have had 500,000 people dead since then. We should not allow this kind of criminality to be normal. This region has been at war nonstop for 30 years. Actually, I would say for at least 57 years since the Six-Day War, because there has been no honest accounting of international law, no honest diplomacy. It's been militarization all the way through. And we could have peace immediately in this region. All that is required, in my view, is the United States change its veto of Palestine as the 194th UN member state, because on that basis, all the region would normalize relations and the wars all across this region would stop. But Israel has had control over US policy. And it says no, it wants greater Israel. It wants Israel in Syria. It wants Israel in Lebanon. It wants Israel in the West Bank. It wants Israel in East Jerusalem. It wants Israel in Gaza. And until that stops, we're not going to have peace. So is the U.S. on the fence? Of course not. It's the major protagonist of this whole war and has been for the last 14 years.
Thank you, Jeff.
Important for us to understand where this entire war came from. It did not come from Bashar al-Assad. It came from Washington. There was a decision in 2011 to overthrow Assad. Actually, that came from Jerusalem. This has been a desire of the Israeli government that stretches back more than 25 years. Netanyahu's idea is make the Middle East in Israel's image, overthrow every government that opposes Israel. He's had a friend in that, and that is the CIA and the United States government. So this war in Syria did not come from Assad's repression. It did not come from Assad's dictatorship. This war came from a presidential order by Obama to overthrow Assad starting in the spring of 2011. We have a name for this program. It was Operation Timber Sycamore. The United States, together with other countries in this region, trained fighters, especially jihadists, including the ones that just took power.
Who's entitled to it?
Overthrow the regime. This created chaos. 600,000 dead in Syria in a war that has gone on for 14 years. The outcome of this war is what the CIA wanted back in 2011, which is that a jihad group would take power in Syria after being armed by the United States. The reason I want to be clear about this is that we will not have peace in this region until we have public diplomacy that is based on real diplomacy, not on CIA operations. And we will not have peace until Israel stops its militarization of the entire Middle East. Because the Syrian war is just one of 6 wars that Israel has promoted, including in Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, Libya, Somalia, and Sudan. We had the list, actually, from Wesley Clark back in 2001, when he was handed a paper in the Pentagon that the goal was 7 wars in 5 years. The only war that hasn't taken place yet, to Netanyahu's great consternation, is the US war with Iran, which Israel is still trying to instigate to this very day. So the Syrian war is part of a regional tragedy. We have tragedy in Gaza, the West Bank, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Sudan, South Sudan, and Libya that I put at the hands of the United States government and its ally, Israel, because none of these wars had to happen. These were all wars of choice. They were all wars that came from the idea of regime change operations, that the United States would determine which regimes operate in which countries. We'll never have peace in this region if outside imperial powers like the United States are dictating the terms to this region. The only way to have peace in this region is if this region is determining its own future, not outside powers.
Wow. This guy is basically spilling the guts on Israel, as well as America. And I think this is very important for us to understand this dynamic, why so many people are coming out, not only against Israel in a lot of the wars that they have provoked, and a lot of these false flags operations, especially in the Middle East, but this also coincides with the interview that Tucker Carlson did with Mike Huckabee, who is the U.S. ambassador to Israel, because I covered that as well. And I want you guys to look at this because I just popped this up. Okay, I saw this and I immediately went live here, guys, because I didn't want you guys to miss this, because you may hear multiple people around the internet calling out Israel, calling out the influence Israel have on America. But when you have someone like a Jeffrey Sachs on the world stage stating the same thing, it actually confirms what's going on. The American taxpayer dollars, American soldiers and troops and airmen and naval men and Marines, we're the ones who are losing our lives behind a war that we should really have no part of. We should really have no part of. The UN partition plan in 1947 gave land. Okay, they bought some of the land, and because of conflicts and wars and some terrorist acts on the parts of either be Hamas or Hezbollah, they use that as an excuse to increase their borders. So when we look at these dynamics, it's very important for us to understand this, that again, we are being gaslit by the American government, by the way, of Israel in some regards. Now, everyone cannot be speaking in conjecture and allegations and lies. When are we going to stand 10 toes down that we are complicit as a nation? Not that we have any say so, because we live in a republic, of what's currently going on. I want you guys to listen in on this as well.
Money is at stake. Land is very valuable. Israel has a lot of resources. By the way, if you're accused of a crime, you can hide here. That's a pretty good passport to have. It's a good thing, right? So who's entitled to it? I don't understand, and you're very discouraged in the United States from asking this question for some reason. It's a totally rational question.
I'm not discouraged.
No, you're not discouraged. Yeah. Others do. You're like the only person I can have this conversation with. Everyone will be like, shut up, Nazi. It's a foundational question. Are you speaking of an ethnic group or a religious group?
Well, I think you're looking at, for many people, it is religious. There are people who may not have a deep religious connection to Judaism, but they're still Jews.
Okay, so it's an ethnic category.
It is ethnic, but it is also religious. It is rooted in religion. You can't take it out of it. Now, that means
then how can an atheist?
Well, I will tell you this. There are some people who say, I'm Christian. They never go to church. They never pray. They never read their Bible. They don't tithe.
But they're not entitled to citizenship on the basis of that.
Well,
they're not entitled to.
They still call themselves Christian, even though they.
Now, I know that made no sense what Mike Huckabee was talking about as he was referring to Christians, because Christians are not saying, because I'm Christian, I'm an American citizen. Because I'm Christian, I'm a British citizen. Because I'm Christian, I'm a citizen of France, or whatever religions that majority of these countries take hold on. But this is the point that a lot of people are making, that when you look at the current state of Israel and the Jewish people there, I was just watching this 6-year-old interview about how a lot of pedophiles flee to Israel that are Jewish, because they can, again, track their genealogy. Then they can use Israel as a safe haven to avoid the American court system. And you have some Americans with some Jewish state organization tracking down a lot of these pedophiles, but a lot of them are still being guarded and being safe within Israel. And that actually was brought up in this interview very slightly as well. But nevertheless, when we have to look at the dynamics of this, I was just looking at a rabbi, and his last name was Oppenheimer. Usually Oppenheimer, I believe, is a German last name. And a lot of people are trying to equate the religious part of being a Jew to a particular race. There's really no race that Jews can hold claim to when you actually look at the historical genealogy of Jewish people. But Mike Huckabee alludes that they are both an ethnic and a religion. So if they are an ethnic, usually ethnic people, now correct me if I'm wrong, okay? Correct me if I'm wrong. I could be going totally off on a tangent here, but usually ethnic people have a lot of similarities, not just a belief system. Am I right by saying that? Usually there's some phenotype, there's complexion, something that on the outward you can tell to a certain degree that this is part of a certain ethnic. Is ethnic equate to culture when it comes to this? This is why this is so damn confusing. Because I think there's nothing else like when people state that they are a Jew, right? I don't think there's nothing like it. And the majority of Jewish people who get promoted to the screen, who get promoted on News Report and TV shows and movies are usually white. They usually look like Mike Huckabee. You couldn't tell Bibi Netanyahu if he was a Polish guy or what we now look at as Jewish people, even though there's Jewish people part of all races. I just want to point that out because it's very confusing sometimes. Some of you may not be confused as I.
Identify.
Okay, but
I mean, my God.
I don't know, Mike Huckabee. Just because a group of people state that they are religion and thus that religion is a ethnic group doesn't deem them rights to a land that there's no proof it was their original land in the first place, okay? It was always the Palestinian land from the modern day people of today, from what we can understand since the 40s or the 30s or the 1912s. If you look at those dates accurately, then you know exactly what I'm referring to.
Shit, don't everybody believe in Google?
So again, whether it be genealogy, phenotype, blood, genetics, how can you prove that today's Jews, that by the way of the UN and partitioning off Palestine, parts of Palestine, giving them that land that was the right thing spiritually by the Bible, which majority of Americans are Christian, but that demographic is changing very rapidly. But nevertheless, that these are in fact the Jews and the descendants of ancient Jews that were the Levantine people that was a derivative and a descendant of the Canaanite people. Were all Canaanites black? Were all Canaanites white? Was all Canaanites Jewish? These are some of the questions I think that he should have went a little bit harder on. But nevertheless, he did challenge him very toughly here.
hey, here's the
So I believe that's what's important here because a lot of these things are getting confused. And I just wanted to point that out. But I want to listen into this guy just a little bit more here.
Hands of the United States government and its ally Israel, because none of these wars had to happen. These were all wars of choice. They were all wars that came from the idea of regime change operations, that the United States would determine which regimes operate in which countries. We'll never have peace in this region if outside imperial powers like the United States are dictating the terms to this region. The only way to have peace in this region is if this region is determining its own future, not outside powers. And Israel could never do these wars on its own. These are American wars. America provides the financing, it provides the military backup, it provides the naval support, it provides the intelligence operations, it provides the munitions. Israel couldn't fight for one day without the United States backing. Israel could not be committing a genocide in Gaza without the United States' full operational complicity. I don't mean political complicity, I mean direct, daily operational complicity. This has to end. This region has been divided for 100 years, first by the British Empire and then by the American Empire. And this is going on until today. We have a genocide going on right next door. Till today, till this morning. People being wantonly killed, brazenly killed, because the United States is providing the means for this. So this is what's happening in Syria. Is the US on the fence? Hardly. It's the major actor. I know, by the way, I know firsthand that in 2012,
I think the major question here, ladies and gentlemen, is why does the U.S. support Israel so hard? Is it because of the UN partition plan, or is it because of the Bible says so? I don't think no one really knows except the U.S. government as well as the Israeli government. But I also believe it's not one reason. I believe it's a stack of reasons, a layer cake of strategy, politics, religion, guilt, and leverage. America didn't wake up one morning and say, you know what? We want to support Israel forever. I believe that this relationship got built like a highway system, one road at a time. Because again, as I state this a lot, as we're talking about Israel and the relationship that we have with them when it comes to conflicts and wars within the Middle Eastern region, we cannot forget the history behind the current day Jews, okay, the current day Jews that are in the region, in that Palestinian region, and how initially they bought land. And some people allude that they were forced to sell land, the Palestinians, because do not forget, America officially does not recognize Palestine as a statehood. The UN partition plan in 1947 wasn't the marriage between Israel and America, but we were part of those negotiation deals to carve out land because Jews have the right to exist, which everybody does, to have parts of land within that region. And in 1948, the UN as well as America recognized Israel as a nation state, but they never recognized Palestine as a nation state, and we still don't. But this was the birth certificate of Israel. And that plan basically said, again, without any Palestinian officials, split the land into two states. And like every international plan made by people who don't live there, it immediately turned into chaos. I want you guys to think of it like this. And now, again, call me out if you believe that I'm lying. That you have a nation state of your own, even though you're not being recognized. But take, for instance, you have a house and you have 10 acres and you have people living all over your 10 acres, your people, your family. Then some people in a far distant country get together and have a meeting and basically state that, hey, we're going to buy some of your land. And if you don't sell it, we're going to take it. So you sell it. Then they come in and they start to expand their borders. Don't you believe there's going to be a lot of conflict? Don't you believe there's going to be a lot of skirmishes between those people? So as we look at the history of this, the UN plan actually matters, but it didn't automatically create the U.S.-Israel relationship that we see today, because early on, America still wanted to keep influence with Arab states as well. And the U.S. wasn't trying to be emotionally bonded. It was trying to be geopolitically positioned. So if somebody tells you it's just because of the UN, they're skipping the next part. Again, 1948, Israel declared statehood, and the U.S. recognized it immediately. That's kind of like meeting somebody and moving them into your apartment the same day. And a lot of people believe that we had a lot of remorse because of what Jewish people in their historic, past, as we equate it to the Holocaust, the post-World War II moral weight, the Holocaust aftermath, right? Domestic politics, all these things were occurring. And the U.S. wanted to be on the right side of history in real time. That's why a lot of people are equating this to. But even then, supporting one wasn't always unconditional. Because I believe people forget this part because it ruins that it's always been God's planned storyline. I wish we really had genetics. I wish we had blood samples of the first original Jews and then people who state that they're Jewish, because again, it's ethnic. Why are we bringing up genealogy and blood if it's a religion? And that's why I go back and forth with that interview where Mike Huckabee states that it's both a religion and an ethnic group. Usually ethnic groups you can visually see, you can visually point out. Usually, you know what? I hate to do this live, but I really want to define ethnic group, okay? Because maybe it is cultural more than it is some physical characteristics, okay? I'm just going to pop it up here very quickly, not to state that this is for me. So here we go. It says population sharing common ancestry, okay, language, culture, history, or tradition. So it's not predicated upon your physical attributes. So it could be an ethnic, I guess. Key U.S. categories include white, black, Asian, American Indian, Alaskan Native, Native Hawaiian, Hispanic, Latino, and ethnicity, not race. These groups are defined by shared cultural identity rather than solely biological traits. So anybody can be an ethnic group. Any group of people who state that we are an ethnic can be an ethnic group, right? Because it says key U.S. categories include, but they're naming races until you get to Alaskan Native and Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander, and Hispanic Latino. Because when you look at the amalgamation of Hispanics can be anything. It can be a black Hispanic, it can be a white Hispanic, it can be a brown Hispanic. And then Hispanic people, they're a mixture of, not all, but a lot of them are a mixture of black, Spaniard, white European, as well as the indigenous people of that land, whether it be Tainos, Aztecians, Mayans, etc., especially if we're talking about the region and the state and country of Mexico. Especially in the whole South America, you have all these very indigenous people that, again, people believe they are the descendants of Siberian and Mongolians who came over on the Bering Strait thousands of years ago. But I just wanted to point that out because I just think it's imperative to understand how a group of people can state that they're both a religion and an ethnic and they're conjoined. But there was a part in that interview that I was showing you guys with Mike Huckabee, and Tucker Carlson, of how there was a land case about citizenship, I believe it was in 1950, right? Because if we kind of dial back in 1950, you had the Seuss crisis, right? It was Israel, Great Britain, France, and it was all this drama behind it. And the U.S. pressured withdrawal. America was not always ride or die when it came to Israel. But the early relationship was more like, we support you, but we're not going to burn down the whole region because of you. And that matters because it proves the alliance wasn't purely biblical originally. It was political, it was strategic, it was adjustable. Okay. But I want you guys to listen in on this next part right here.
The difference, you're saying that people who have this identification have a deed to a huge chunk of land on the Mediterranean. Okay. So there's, it's a right. You keep telling me it's a right. And so it's totally fair to say, if you come to my house and say, I've got the title to your house, I get to ask, may I see it? Where'd you get it? And that's exactly what happened here. People from Europe, Eastern Europe, came here, in a lot of cases, atheists, and kicked out a lot of people who lived here.
Land.
Well, but
they did not just throw people out.
They bought a lot of land. There's no question about that.
A lot of land.
But they also,
oh, we got to talk about that because that's a bigger story with. All right, I'm just referring to the video because I covered this already. And the gentleman here who's speaking, okay, Jeffrey Sachs. He's basically telling all how things occurred initially and how things have transpired over the course of time. And basically, because America has designed a relationship where Israel's security claims trigger U.S. action, or at minimum U.S. protection, almost by default. So that's why people were saying that the state of Israel have great influence over the American government, because every time that Israel strikes one of the people in their region, whether it be, Syria, Iran, Iraq, it doesn't matter. Whoever they strike in the region, America then follows up, right? We don't need to have a total report of what occurred. We don't need any evidence, right? We just need the preemptive allegations of you thinking that your security is going to be threatened by Iran. So Israel does a preemptive strike and then America follows on. And a lot of Americans are not really caring about this, and they should, because one, innocent people are dying. That's the most important thing. Innocent people are going to die behind this war. Not just innocent people in Iran, not just innocent people in the Middle East, but innocent Americans, American troops, whether it be naval men and women, Air Force men and women, Marines men and women, Army men and women, doesn't matter. Coast Guard in some regards. We're going to be yet again dying at the hands of another country's war that they started. But anyway, I just wanted to kind of catch this live here because this was very important. And if you guys are just tuning in, make sure you rewind the tape so you can get the full story of what Jeffrey Sachs was actually uncovering, and basically telling the entire world how the partnership and relationship between Israel and America occurred. And while now Israel is literally attacking, okay? And when I mean literally, I am spinning a little conjecture there. But again, all of these conflicts between all of these different Middle Eastern countries. And here's the thing where Americans may think that Iran, and I'm not speaking up for Iran, okay? I'm just kind of giving you the tell of the tape here, that Iran is attacking all of these Middle Eastern countries. No, Iran is trying to attack the U.S. military bases inside of these countries, whether it be Qatar, Jordan, Cyprus, Oman. Wherever you see Iran trying to attack, they're trying to destroy American U.S. bases because of their preemptive strike of Israel and then the follow-on attack from U.S. military. Yeah. But again, I think he will give you a better backdrop and a story of how all of this actually started. But nonetheless, you guys have a good